comenzar a grabar la clase. Okay, today we're going to finish what we started last week. We were talking about the Han Dynasty. Okay, and today we're going to finish the chapter that talks about the Han Dynasty. Over here I have a video that talks about the Great Wall, but the Great Wall, it had been buildings from different dynasties, and it started with the Zhou Dynasty, then the Qing Dynasty, then the Han Dynasty, and there are other dynasties that continue building this Great Wall in China. Okay, now let's continue talking about. Now let's talk about the achievement, all the different inventions that the Han Dynasty discovered or create for humanity. Over here, as you see, there are different inventions, such as, like you said, some instruments like the drum, bells, flutes, harps. Also, they design different gardens designing, and also they work on different kind of writing. And I think they also discovered the silk. Now, Han made many achievements in art, literature, and learning. Art and literature thrived, and inventors developed many useful devices. With new invention, productivity increased, and the empire prospered. Art and literature. The Chinese of Han period produced many works of art. They became expert in figure painting and style painting that include portrait of people. Portrait often show religious figure and Confucian scholars, like you see over here in these pictures. In the literature, Han Chinese is known as its poetry. Se destacaban por la poesía. Poetry developed new style of verse, including the Fu style, which was the most popular. Fu poets, oh my God. Okay, the Fu poets combined prose and poetry to create long works of literature. Han writers also produce important work of history. One historian by the name of Sima Qian wrote the Shiji. El Shiji es un libro que habla sobre toda la historia de las dinastías en China. Se llama Shiji, which was a complete history of all the dynasties through the early Han period. The Shiji, also called the record of grand historian or record of the scribes, describe more than 2,000 years of Chinese culture. This passage describes a farmer named Bushi. Okay, this is not important. Inventions and devices. The Han Chinese invented one item that was used every day. They, like the paper, they invented the paper during the Han Chinese. That was a very important invention. The Hans also made other inventions in science. These include the sundial and seismographer. Sundial es el reloj de sol, como lo ven aquí, y también el sismógrafo. Aquí está el sismógrafo que medía los movimientos de la Tierra. The sundial was an early type of clock, and the seismographer placed an emperor who were very interested in knowing about the movement of the earth, los movimientos en la Tierra. Así que inventaron el sismógrafo. Okay. Saying, yeah. Now Sang Heng, the inventor of this seismographer, was a respected astronomer, mathematician, engineer, and painter during the Eastern Han Dynasty. Another Han invention is the acupuncture. It improved medicine. Many Han inventions in science and medicine are still used today. Esta es la acupuntura. Durante el periodo de la Han se descubrió la acupuntura, lo que aún se practica Inclusive acá hemos visto sitios donde se practica la acupuntura, la medicina oriental. Forming and manufacturing. Any advance in manufacturing took place during the Han.
Teacher, una pregunta, ¿cómo ellos hacían para saber qué exactamente cuál punto tenían que poner la
Deja tu
aguja?
story. Mira, como tú puedes ver aquí, ellos estudiaron qué parte del cuerpo afecta a qué órgano dentro de tu cuerpo. ¿Ok? Si de repente tú pones un alfiler aquí, quiere decir que esto va a tocar cierto órgano y te va a beneficiar o va a reparar algún problema que... Ellos ya estudiaron el cuerpo y sabían dónde habría que poner estas agujitas finitas, ¿ya? Como para tratar de corregir algún mal que hay en tu cuerpo. Pero en realidad yo no sé, habría que estudiar eso.
Pero entonces esa técnica
¿Dónde
requería
ubicar?
experiencia, porque entonces si te pasabas un poquito más arriba o un poquito más abajo del
Afecta a
punto,
otro. Ajá. Mira, que ellos deben tener un mapa del cuerpo humano donde tienen que poner la aguja para qué parte del cuerpo te va a beneficiar. Si tú buscas en internet un mapa del cuerpo humano para la acupuntura, tú vas a encontrar todo ese mapa donde te va a decir a dónde tú debes pero tampoco no es cualquier aguja, son agujas especiales. No es cualquier aguja que tú te vas, yo tengo problemas con el estómago, voy a agarrar una aguja y me la voy a poner en la panza. No, eso no es así. ¿Ya? Muy bien. Ellos también inventaron esto también, que ayudaba para arar y para mover la tierra. Y eso ¿cómo se llama? Era beneficioso para la agricultura. Ellos inventaron esto. ¿Ya?
Eso se
No,
parece mucho, teacher, eso se
dígame.
parece mucho el coso que utilizaban para las granjas, ese coso.
Para arar, sí, para mover la tierra.
Se parece mucho
Iron
al...
Pole, la que dice aquí, Iron Pole.
Para mí se parece un poco a lo que utilizaban en Egipto.
Sí, también sí, todos se parecían, pero esto creo que son mucho más anteriores que los de Egipto, mucho más. Acuérdate que esta cultura es mucho más antigua. Es más, ellos van por el año, qué sé yo, ellos van por el año 4000, si no me equivoco, y nosotros apenas vamos por el 2000 y pico, ¿ya? Ellos también inventaron bueno, lo tenían como una especie de secreto. Ellos sabían cómo hacer el silk, que es la seda, que se saca de un gusano que prepara eso, y entonces ellos sabían eso. Eso era como un secreto que nadie sabía, solamente cuando fue, ¿cómo se llama? Marco Polo fue que descubrió la seda y ahí se comenzó a comercializar la seda. Y aquí explica cómo se hace o cómo se producía la seda allá. Era un secreto que nadie sabía cómo se hacía, hasta que llegó Marco Polo, y Marco Polo fue el que comenzó a comercializar los productos a Europa y los llevó a Europa. El budismo también se practicó en China. En esta cultura se promovió mucho lo que es la escultura. Aquí vemos una escultura del Buda, en una piedra se tallaba, bien bonito. Así que esa fue durante la dinastía Han, se promovió mucho el budismo. Y en las áreas donde se tradujo del hindú, se tradujo al chinese, para poder que ellos adoptaran esa nueva filosofía de vida del budismo. Ok, vamos a ver el video que habla sobre la Gran Muralla, que siempre nosotros nos preguntamos cómo fue eso, cómo se creó que sea. Pero esto fue durante años y años y años. No es que solamente una dinastía, sino que durante diferentes dinastías se fue ampliando la Gran Muralla.
A 13,000-mile dragon of earth and stone winds its way through the countryside of China with a history almost as long and serpentine as its structure. The Great Wall began as multiple walls of rammed earth built by individual feudal states during the Qin-Qiu period to protect against nomadic raiders north of China and each other. When Emperor Qin Shi Huang unified the states in 221 BCE, the Tibetan Plateau and Pacific Ocean became natural barriers. but the mountains in the north remained vulnerable to Mongol, Turkish, and Xiongnu invasions. To defend against them, the emperor expanded the small walls built by his predecessors, connecting some and fortifying others. As the structures grew from Lingtao in the west to Liaodong in the east, they collectively became known as the Long Wall. To accomplish this task, the emperor enlisted soldiers and commoners, not always voluntarily. Of the hundreds of thousands of builders recorded during the Qin dynasty, many were forcibly conscripted peasants, and others were criminals serving out sentences. Under the Han dynasty, the wall grew longer still, reaching 3,700 miles and spanning from Dunhuang to the Bohai Sea. Forced labor continued under the Han Emperor Han Wudi, and the wall's reputation grew into a notorious place of suffering. Poems and legends of the time told of laborers buried in nearby mass graves, or even within the wall itself. And while no human remains have been found inside, grave pits do indicate that many workers died from accidents, hunger, and exhaustion. The wall was formidable, but not invincible. Both Genghis and his son Kublai Khan managed to surmount the wall during the Mongol invasion of the 13th century. After the Ming dynasty gained control in 1368, they began to refortify and further consolidate the wall, using bricks and stones from local kilns. Averaging 23 feet high and 21 feet wide, the wall's 5,500 miles were punctuated by watchtowers. When raiders were sighted, fire and smoke signals traveled between towers until reinforcements arrived. Small openings along the wall let archers fire on invaders, while larger ones were used to drop stones and more. But even this new and improved wall was not enough. In 1644, northern Manchu clans overthrew the Ming to establish the Qing dynasty, incorporating Mongolia as well. Thus, for the second time, China was ruled by the very people the wall had tried to keep out. With the empire's borders now extending beyond the Great Wall, the fortifications lost their purpose. And without regular reinforcement, the wall fell into disrepair. Rammed earth eroded, while brick and stone were plundered for building materials. But its job wasn't finished. During World War II, China used sections for defense against Japanese invasion, and some parts are still rumored to be used for military training. But the wall's main purpose today is cultural. As one of the largest man-made structures on Earth, it was granted UNESCO World Heritage status in 1987. Originally built to keep people out of China, the Great Wall now welcomes millions of visitors each year. In fact, the influx of tourists has caused the wall to deteriorate, leading the Chinese government to launch preservation initiatives. It's also often acclaimed as the only man-made structure visible from space. Unfortunately, that's not at all true. In low Earth orbit, all sorts of structures like bridges, highways, and airports are visible, and the Great Wall is only barely discernible. From the moon, it doesn't stand a chance. But regardless, it's the Earth we should be studying it from, because new sections are still discovered every few years, branching off from the main body and expanding this remarkable monument to human achievement.
Okay, now let's watch about this, the Terracotta Army. Let's watch this video. It was in the Qing Dynasty.
It's a vast pottery army which is slowly being unearthed from the tomb where it's lain for more than 2,000 years. At one time, when a Chinese ruler died,
I work in this site for many years, for decades. Yeah. So these warriors are all life-sized, like real soldiers. Also, they have different facial features. You can tell from their hairstyle, their we call headgears, and they can tell their different ranks. The terracotta warriors was found accidentally. One day, a group of farmers dug in well here, and they find some pieces of the pottery. They also find the head of the terracotta warriors, and the team, archaeological team, came to this area and they start to dig. Originally in ancient China, like 3,000 years ago, they believed the afterlife. When the elites died, like king or noble people, they died, and they normally buried their servants with them, so the human sacrifice, and people start criticize the human sacrifice. So they think probably use the terracotta figures as a substitute. When we discovered in pit 3, very surprisingly, we find well-preserved colors. When we lift one terracotta warrior, terracotta bodies, so the very bright colors stick on the soil, very bright, red and pink, blue, green. The other colors are natural, like natural, probably mineral or come from some plants, but the purple is chemical from chemical reaction, so that kind of artificial. So these kind of chemical reaction, so only find in China. That's really revolutionary, that kind of technology in 2,000 years ago in Qin time. That was really fascinating part of my archaeological career. I feel I'm lucky. Also, I feel I have a responsibility that's unique in China and also unique in the world. Even now I walk in, I still feel very impressed.
Okay. With this video, guys, we conclude the dynasty, different dynasties in China. Remember, there are several dynasties. We study only the Song and the Han dynasty. There is also the Qing, and there's another two more dynasties. Javier Chen, ¿de qué se ríe? ¿De qué se ríe? Estás jugando, estás viendo video, ¿verdad? Estás viendo video y no estás prestando clase, no estás prestando atención a la clase. Bien, todo eso queda grabado, Javier Chen. Todo este trimestre te he visto así riéndote, viéndote, en vez de estar prestando atención a los videos de la clase. Bueno, Chen. Bueno, chicos, hasta el día de hoy terminamos con lo que es las dinastías orientales. Ahora vamos a entrar a otra área. Vamos a entrar a la hebrea. Ya vamos a entrar ahora a la cultura hebrea a partir de la otra semana. Abraham, las religiones católica, cristiana, todo esto vamos a revisarlo durante estas últimas 2 semanas que vienen adelante. ¿Entendido, chicos? Chicos, acuérdense, tenemos que terminar los vocabularios Chen, terminamos los vocabularios, tenemos los assessment, también tenemos que terminar, ya están asignados. Así que vayan trabajando porque se los voy a pedir, chicos, se los voy a pedir. Así que vayan trabajando en eso, Luca, Joseph, Sarapiti, los demás que están ausentes, ¿ya? Así que, chicos, bueno, pórtense bien y nos vemos la otra semana. Hasta luego. Chao.